Welcome back to the wild. I guess it's time to spill some tea. I have a lot of people in my life, and I'm sure a lot of viewers, who identify as Christian. So let's just start with, I have nothing against you having that faith path. Honestly, if it's actually working for you, then I'm really jealous, because it is not easy when you leave the relative safety of that flock. I would not have left had I had a way to stay. If you are one of the very lucky ones and you have found yourself in a good community with leadership who don't rule from the vast human legacy of toxicity, and your congregation supports your own natural personhood as real and valid, well, I salute you. And please understand that we are not all so lucky. If you are a Christian who understands that not all religious communities are healthy, then you may find my story useful in understanding why some people dear to you have struggled. But if you are a Christian whose faith is too sensitive to hear it criticized, and you feel the need to be a warrior for Jesus and leave argumentative, corrective, or otherwise hateful comments, be aware they will be quickly deleted. This video is not your pulpit, and I need for the comment section to be a safe space for anyone who wants to have a thoughtful discussion about this. In short, please don't Jesus-splain in the comments feed. If you've been with me for a while, you'll have noticed that I don't really hide how I feel about Christianity. The chip I'm carrying around is pretty obvious, and I'll admit to having made the conscious decision to let it be visible. And I realize that I may come across as angry or bitter toward organized religion, but the fact is that I am angry and bitter. And I think what I want you to get from this video is that I have earned those feelings. So I'm going to take you through some of my deepest wounds. I'm not doing this to help myself heal because I'm working on that my own damn self. I'm doing this because being quiet only helps the oppression continue. It keeps people who just don't see the problems from having to face them. And I know that I am not alone in being damaged by otherwise decent human beings who are acting in good faith for my welfare, but who have nonetheless contributed to trauma. I'm going to stick to the highlights. These are just moments, examples of the systemic problems that pushed me away from the Christian mindset. I'm going to avoid speaking specifically about any one sect, although we could get into that at a later time. What we'll discuss today are issues that all of Christianity is culpable for, either directly or through influence on culture. And I believe, more broadly, this should be extended to all Abrahamic religion, although I can't speak to Judaism or Islam from personal experience. But this is supposed to be a tell-all, so let's get into my spiritual and social wounds, shall we? Oh, fun. Okay. Let's back it up, all the way back to the beginning. I had difficulty resonating with Christianity from the very beginning. As soon as I could make rudimentary sentences, I was asking everything I could about the nature of God. Yeah, I was a weird-ass child. I was eager to learn all I could about cosmology, and I was immediately met with frustration because the answers my mother was giving me conflicted with my feelings on the subject. First of all, God is a father? Not a mother? Confusing. I don't, as a little one, have a very positive view of fatherhood, so trying to picture God as such was a stretch. But that wasn't the kicker. I was asking these questions because I wanted to reach God, connect, a face-to-face interview, if you will. Literally visit the dwelling place of the gods if need be. But God's not available. There's prayer. You can send voice messages. Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret.
You have reached heaven. Please listen to the menu so we can direct your call. If this is an emergency, please hang up and dial 911. If you'd like to speak to an operator, please stay on the line. Your call is important to us. All operators are currently helping other applicants. Your hold time is approximately 70 years. Please hold. Someone will be with you shortly.
So, you can pray, but the only way to get feedback is through a vague feeling? And I'm asking my mother, no, like, how do you see God and talk to him? And she's like, you can't. He's in heaven, you can't get there, he doesn't come down here, he doesn't even have a physical form. And he's behind this crazy dense cloud anyway, and not even the angels get to see him. This doesn't sound very loving. So how does he even hold you? And props to my mom for not bullshitting me. She just said, I don't know. I did end up making an uneasy peace with this concept of a vague, unknowable God who at best sends you intuitive messages. And of course I learned more about how it's supposed to work as I got older. But the fact remains, there is a distinct lack of intimacy in the Christian God. Argue how you want about the workarounds, but the great and powerful Oz really doesn't like his curtain getting pulled back. And this left me feeling like there was no overriding source of love in the universe. That I wasn't good enough the way God made me to start with. Even so, I did commit to bridging that enormous gulf, no matter the cost. But this gets into that crazy original sin mind warp. Lots of folks have discussed the problems with this ideology in detail. I'm not going to give it much attention here. But guilting you that you are just never good enough because of something your uber great grandmother did eons ago, and the only way not to be a filthy, worthless wretch is to submit your entire soul, will, and critical thinking skills to a jealous overlord for reprieve that will not come until after you die is textbook narcissistic abusive gaslighting. Pretending that this concept equates to love enables so much actual abuse in church leadership and in individual families that never gets recognized. Anyway, not long after that, I was getting old enough that I was not really a toddler anymore. One warm summer day, I decide to run outside and play. My brother's already on the front lawn. My mom stops me immediately. Don't come out here without a shirt on. Why? It's really warm out. You need to put a shirt on. My brother has no shirt on. And here, I didn't actually think that my reasoning would work. I thought she would tell me that my little brother was young enough he didn't need a shirt. He was almost 2 years my junior and still in diapers, definitely still a baby, definitely still young enough not to have to behave like an adult, right? But what she countered with shocked me. He's a boy. He doesn't need a shirt. What? You are a girl and you need to put a shirt on if you're going to leave the house. I'm thinking, what the heck is the difference? So I refuse. Of course, she made me go back inside and wouldn't let me back out without a shirt. I protested. I sulked in the house all day. Well, actually, I cried. Hard. I couldn't get my brain around it. What is so wrong with having a female body? How does being female make me so horrible, so dirty, so shameful that I have to cover my repulsive body? My poor mother, she's just over here trying not to get Child Protective Services called on her. But for me, it was a horrible, soul-crushing lesson in what it means to be a female in our culture. You may be thinking, well, that's got nothing to do with Christianity. Doesn't it, though? Isn't it the Abrahamic traditions that are so knee-jerk sensitive about women's bodies? Isn't this where we get that bizarre purity culture that insists all females cover up their bodies and own the shame of what those gazing at them might be led to think? The degree to which this is mandated varies, of course, but being paranoid about the sexuality of the female body and not the male body is definitely a legacy of these misogynistic religious beliefs pervading Western culture. And for the love of all that is sane, stop calling the way you dress modest. Modesty is a character trait. The word has been hijacked to apply to how well-veiled your transgressive female body is. What you are or are not wearing does not dictate what kind of a person you are. Or do you think everyone living near the equator is going to hell? Moving on. About the same time, my mother started taking us to church. Probably because I kept asking so many damn questions. Largely, we dabbled with the Methodists and the Presbyterians, if memory serves. I'm not sure that matters, other than to clarify that these are normal, waspy denominations, not hardcore. I remember very vividly sitting in Sunday service on uncomfortable pews, made even more uncomfortable by the fact that I was crowded by strangers. The woman next to me was not in good health. I could see through her hose that she had gnarly blue tangles of veins on her legs, and her ankles and feet were swollen so badly it must have been quite painful. The image is still burned into my skull. The minister was getting passionate about his message, which boiled down to something like, "You're suffering because your faith isn't strong enough." Now, even as a kid, I knew there was a part of that meant for the condition of the soul, that it was not necessarily physical. But I'm looking at this woman next to me and many of the other women in the congregation who are all eating up his every word, who are most all elderly and in one way or another sick or with failing bodies. As a sensitive, I can literally feel the faith oozing out of these women. They really believe with their whole hearts in the gospel, in Christ, and horrifyingly, they are believing every word out of this young man's mouth and putting their heads down in shame because they know they haven't done enough, haven't believed well enough. They're crying because their suffering is their own fault, and Jesus wants to heal them, but they're just too faithless. I could feel the hypocrisy in this young man. I could feel that he was expressing a message he himself didn't believe he was living up to. And yet he stood there, pounding his fist on the pulpit and raising his tone and telling these people to their faces they were suffering only for lack of faith. The woman beside me was muttering to herself, castigating herself, really. This young man was hurting her, hurting many of the people in the room unnecessarily, shaming them without just cause. I wanted to scream. I wanted to jump up on the pew and tell everyone not to listen. I wanted to run up to the pulpit and tell the man to stop. I knew this would horrify my mother. I knew I would be labeled as a devil-possessed child. Oh, that's a funny story we can talk about later if we want. Anyway, so I did nothing, and my entire body burned with unspent adrenaline. I sat there and I just shot daggers into this preacher with my eyes, willing him to stop the sham. But of course he didn't. I never much liked sermons after that. I was never sure if I was getting the real truth. These men who were supposed to be intermediaries for God were, well, thanks. I don't know whether this moment was personally traumatizing for me, per se, but it did drive a healthy, skeptical wedge between myself and trusting church leaders. Unfortunately, it did not ultimately stop me from eventually drinking the Kool-Aid wholesale. But this unnecessary shame thing has always stuck in my craw. So I continued on, weird child that I was, and kept searching for truth, for real doctrine. By the time I was 9 years old, I was feeling pretty grown up, and I was starting to feel guilty that I had not even read the Bible all the way through. I mean, sure, early Genesis has the Garden of Eden and Noah's flood, but those stories are fun because there are animals in them. I was getting old enough I needed to take my faith seriously, so I set to reading the entire Bible from cover to cover, a few chapters each night before bed, by flashlight. If you do not want your children to grow up with desperate existential nihilism, Do not let them read the Old Testament. Have you read the Old Testament? That shit is fucked up. Let me summarize. The God of the Old Testament enlists his chosen people to be a raging, genocidal, pillaging, ravaging, sometimes baby-killing, civilization-destroying army for no apparent reason other than world domination by the right people and, because Yahweh gets hurt feelings that all these other people are still worshipping the ancient goddess. Only his masculinity is so threatened by this, we have to change all the names for goddesses into grammatically masculine names and call them demons. And at 9 years old, I really struggled with this sort of sociopathic logic. But I was only 9. I must be missing something. I had to be too young to understand, right? Scriptures are written in parable and dripping with metaphor. There must be some code to deciphering what reads like sadistic, rabid, ethnic cleansing. I paid very, very close attention in Sunday school. Eventually, I was paying very close attention in seminary classes. The answer? The Rosetta Stone for translating these horrifying, carnage-laden passages never turned up. And to this day, I really don't understand why this stuff doesn't bother people more. If you try to pin down anyone devout, their go-to dismissal of the whole thing is that the old ways were fulfilled and done away by Christ's atonement. So it doesn't matter anymore. No. Hold up. That shit wasn't okay back then either. And don't be pressing the ultimate, I don't want to deal with this default button and sputtering, it comes down to faith. No, this doesn't. Violent, xenophobic, wholesale slaughter and general earth salting, temple defiling, women defiling, destruction is absolutely not the work of a God of love. Period. Full stop. So as far as I'm concerned, Christianity and I guess technically Judaism has a lot to answer for touting these stories as scripture, as the literal or even figurative word of God. I will not entertain a God of genocide, ravaging, and cultural bigotry. It is my firm stance that Christianity has a serious systemic problem as long as they hold on to this as scripture. As long as they own this violent, erupting volcano god as their own god, they do not worship a God of love. I do not care that about 0 AD he launched a massive PR campaign and got some therapy for his abusive parenting issues. That's not enough. That's great for creepy Uncle Larry. Power to ya. Welcome back to functioning society. But it's not enough for a supposed God of all creation. I will not accept, the atonement took care of it. In a word, bullshit. Okay, that was intense. Moving on. As we've already sort of covered, I was very driven from the start to seek out the mysteries, to be fully involved in a religious life and a path of transformation. I was always the kid in Sunday school paying attention and ready with answers, usually far more thorough answers than my teachers even wanted. But as I reached adolescence, the charm of that faith started to dim for me. Church felt lackluster. My enthusiasm was waning, and I struggled to understand why. Why did I feel so disconnected with my faith when I had always made it pretty much my whole focus in life? Well, in the church I was in, at the age of 12, the boys and the girls are separated for their lessons. Boys receive preparations for being contributing members of the priesthood. They were being groomed for religious life. And girls? Yeah, you guessed it. We were getting lessons on patience, service, and being nurturing. Oh my God. So what this was doing, of course, was doubling down on all that systemic misogyny that is so pernicious in so many Christian churches and communities. And it was exactly perfect to make me feel utterly alienated. You see, I have no native interest in being a broodmare. I know. Shocker. If I'd been in a safe environment and the right person wanted to partner with me, who knows how I would have felt. But as a child of abuse and one so very motivated by religious devotion, homemaking and child rearing were not exactly page turners for me. I longed to be able to sit in on those priesthood-focused classes, to be continuing my education in religion, not diapers. I was born to serve as a priestess, but my culture only acknowledged men in that sort of capacity. As a teen, I was allowed to take elective seminary courses. We weren't quite at the sexism level of denying women an education. But for me, it couldn't go beyond a few adult classes. My plumbing, my shameful female body, made me ineligible to take orders of any kind. And while I didn't leave over that alone, that refusal to acknowledge my wiring, my need of identity, my soul's instinctive mission, it tore at me for years until I did become free. With all of the red flags, you'd think I would have gotten out as soon as I was old enough to tell my parents, no, I don't want to go to church. But I was doggedly stubborn in my faith. I was going to see it through all the way. And I guess I did, because I did marry in the church. I don't like to talk about that time. I'm pretty humiliated about the whole thing, especially that I could accept someone I wasn't even attracted to for the sake of fulfilling God's will for me. But it wasn't until I experienced Christianity as a married woman that it all closed in too much. You see, before that, everyone took me generally as myself. I was very devout, and so I had a fair reputation. I had whatever the church equivalent of street cred is. But after I was a married woman, suddenly I disappeared. It was like being a ghost in my own life. No one able to see me anymore. I was now an appendage of my husband, and it was his personality and his standing in the church, which wasn't as stellar as mine, by the way, that people responded to when they interacted with me. And very quickly, within, I'd say, 3 months of being married, the only topic of conversation anyone wanted to have with me was whether I was expecting and what our family plans were. Oh my fucking God, wake me up from this Stepford nightmare. I exist! I started lying and claiming to be infertile, but that just upped conversations on adoption. Oh my God, people, don't ask women about making babies. The creepy attention on my reproductive system eventually abated after I became aggressively clear I was not in a rush to Xerox myself. But the vapid erasure of my existence as anything other than a piece of my spouse continued, and I really just couldn't handle it. Ultimately, I couldn't stay. There were some other very major doctrinal issues that came up for me about the same time, but those are specific to one sect, not Christianity at large, and I may tell you about it down the road when I feel ready. So, long story long, I faded out. I didn't quit going in a maelstrom of righteous anger. That would have been cool. I wanted to take the time to sort things out just in case I was being unfair or missing something. But in the end, when I did start letting go of all that dogma, I found that I was free for the first time in my life to be truly myself, whatever that might mean. It's the closest I've ever come to having true peace. And as I've developed my own relationship with the divine, I have fulfilled that childhood imperative to connect with deity, to find that sacred intimacy with the mind of the cosmos. And it's a journey, one I am grateful to be on, largely unfettered. In my personal experience, just speaking for me and not knocking your experience, it was leaving the Christian shackles behind that let me finally begin to discover the great mysteries. Perhaps some do find that fulfillment within the confines of the faith, but I think that for many of us, the path up is the path out. So that's the gist of it. This is why I grumble so much. This is why I'm not comfortable settling on any dogma, not even, say, Wicca or Hellenism, but also because I long for a deep past that's just lost to us. And I'm okay being outside all the boxes. Heck, I prefer it. Thanks for letting me get all of that off my chest. I've never really spoken out before, except for a pointed comment here and there. I'm just not anxious for the burning stake, you know? But I guess that cat's out of that bag. So thank you. Your support means a lot. I'll see you in the next video. And until then, keep the faith wild. Just believe. Believe. Natural priest personhood. The only way not to be a filthy and critical thinking skills to a jealous overlord who my little brother was too. Your whole time is Oh, this is so stupid. Stop. Don't come out here without a shirt on. Nobody in this county has a muffler. Not one vehicle. Jesus wants to heal them. Hi. What was that about? Welcome back to functioning society. Bullshit. Fire and brimstone, and don't you understand that you're all going to hell if you don't repent? And I don't know why I'm acting like a Baptist minister, because your faith is not strong enough. Your faith is not strong enough. Your faith is not strong enough. Everybody's faith is not strong enough. Because I'm telling you that this is the thing that I'm extrapolating on, because this is very important that you understand that you will never be good enough without the vast mercy of Christ, because